probably one of the most spectacular forms of motorsport. It's the only sport where the passenger has to work with the driver to keep these machines stable through the corners, and give the driver the ability to get the best out of the bike.
Sidecar racers are usually looked at as oddballs in the road racing community, and as just plain daft by the general public. However, the British and indeed the international sidecar racing scene are currently enjoying a renaissance, and the future is looking good. What makes sidecar racing unique in motorsport is the true necessity of teamwork. The driver and the passenger of the outfit are an integral part of the machine, and without the high-speed teamwork, the consequences can be at least uncompetitive, and at worst dangerous. Thanks to more TV coverage and better crowd attendance, more and more people are again becoming involved in the sport. So, how easy is it to go sidecar racing? 7 times world champion Steve Webster.
If you wanted to start sidecar racing, first thing you would do is you would obviously go and get your medical, get your licence. Then you go off and find yourself a sidecar. And I think now, basically, to start with, to get into the class, you're talking of a Formula 2 bike or an older Formula 1 bike to get started, and it's quite easy.
Steve Webster makes it sound simple. If you were just starting out in sidecars, most people would opt for a smaller Formula 2. The Formula 2 sidecar has to conform to a set of strict regulations designed to keep costs down and to provide an entry level for prospective teams, most easily recognised from the side of the track by the side numbers being on red backgrounds. The chassis must be made from steel, and the steering systems must be of a conventional leading or trailing link design. The engine must be situated in front of the driver and must be a production-based engine of 350cc 2-stroke or 600cc 4-stroke, with Yamaha, Honda and Kawasaki 600s being by far the most common. Formula 1 sidecar regulations, on the other hand, allow a lot more scope for designer and engineer to experiment with different ideas and come in various shapes and sizes. The rules state that engine sizes are limited to 500cc 2-stroke and 1200cc 4-stroke, and that the engine must be mounted in front of the rear wheel. Recognisable from the side of the track by a white background to its racing number. What makes both these classes sidecars and not three-wheelers is a set of regulations which govern the distance between the tracks of the front and rear wheel, and its overall dimensions. Novices to sidecar racing, identifiable by their orange bibs, can start on either of these type of machines. So having acquired one, where do you go? The obvious place to start is club racing, which takes place on virtually every other Sunday, anywhere in the British Isles. The traditional starting place for past British and world champions. The club racing scene in Britain is currently very active, with track hire for the better circuits getting too expensive for the smaller clubs. Many went out of business. The remaining clubs have rationalised the type and classes of races they offer to riders, with most giving a sidecar race on the programme. There are over a dozen racing clubs in the country, with New Era and Bemsey being the largest.
My name is Jim Parker and I'm the boss man of the New Era Motorcycle Club. We've just finished a day's racing at Snetterton, and we've been racing here now for the best part of 40 years. I've been an official that time, and all the time we've run sidecars on these circuits, right back to the days when the Triumph Twin and that sort of machine. We run this year some 40 odd race meetings, all of which include sidecars, on most of the major circuits in the country, places like Castle Combe, Cadwell Park, Snetterton, Brands Hatch, etc., etc. We find that obviously there's quite a demand from sidecars who wish to race on the proper circuits as opposed to the cheap airfields, and this obviously gives a grounding and an apprenticeship for the riders to go on to better things.
Larger clubs charge the teams between £70 and £90 for a day's racing, but the cost of circuit hire means there's little left over for prize money. So, what's the alternative? Well, you could go airfield racing. There are dozens of disused airfields around the country, and some of the smaller clubs make good use of them by building temporary circuits with cones and bales. Because they don't have high circuit costs, they can return some of the entry and gate money as prizes. Jules Williams and Dave O'Connor are in their second season as novices with the North Gloucestershire Racing Club.
It's nice to race at the proper circuits, but the great thing about the airfield racing is that the runoff areas are enormous, and you can really sort of you can learn so much, because if you get it wrong, you've still got another sort of 50, 100 yards to break. And we've had a couple of offs at airfields, haven't we? And you just sort of get back on, push start it, and off you go again.
Jazz Miller and Richard Swift have been racing a Formula One outfit with the same club for the last 2 years.
There are advantages and disadvantages to racing sidecars on an airfield. The main advantage is there's nothing to hit, and it also means that you can experiment a bit with the performance of the outfit and the teamwork between the driver and the passenger. You can push the limits a little bit more than you normally would.
The disadvantages are the tracks are very bumpy, which means that teams must check the chassis after every meeting for stress fractures. For the crews with the talent and the finance and the ambition to succeed, the next stage up is the UK Sidecar Challenge. The rights to the name British Championship are owned by a different organisation, so it isn't officially a British Championship, but few in sidecar racing care what it's called. This is where you'll find the fastest sidecars in the country. '99 has been a good year for sidecar racing. In the Formula 2 class, Tom Hanks and Steve Wilson have never looked like being beaten. They have come to the penultimate round at Brands Hatch with both hands firmly on the trophy. Mark Hegarty, equally dominant in the Formula 1 class, have come to Brands Hatch with a healthy points lead over Dave Holden and Ben Birchall. But there is still some work to do.
Dave is 82 points behind me at the minute, so I just need to score 19 points, which is either second, mine the first race, and I should have everything sealed up nicely. It would have been sealed at Pembury apart from engine blow, one more lap to go, so it would have been nice if I had it then. And the rest of the meets could have been just for fun sort of thing. That's what I was hoping anyway.
Sean and Mark went on to lift their first ever championship, but they didn't win the race. Tom Hanks and Steve Wilson won the Formula 1 race on their Formula 2, proving, on short circuits at least, that the corner speed of lighter, nimbler outfits are every bit a match for the larger, more powerful bike, given enough track space to use it. Other Formula 2s in the same race did not fare as well, finding the big outfits too fast in a straight line to make a pass on the corners.
At the level we're at now, racing like the F2s we've got against the F1s that are out there in the British Championships, it's hard work, but realistically, the F1 should clear our finishes. That's what it should be like, but it doesn't quite happen like that. It's only as dangerous as the blow of the throttling's out.
The relative merits of the two classes will be debated by the teams for some time, but what is fact is that there is a new national championship next year, run by a new organisation that will combine both classes in the same race.
Well, for next year we're still looking for a major sponsor for the championship, and we do have one or two contacts. The prize money already is set at £1,000 per race, or per meeting, per class, and that will be split down accordingly. I don't know quite yet exactly how that will be done, and obviously if a sponsor comes on board it will be increased. The sidecars next year running for Formula 1 and Formula 2 together for the first time in a national championship. So that's been fairly popular with some and not quite so popular with others, but we think with the spreader circuits then everybody will have an equal chance over the year. The new organisation for these championships, the Motorcycle Race Organisation, a new name in motorcycle sport, has been formed by the British Motorcycle Racing Club and the British Racing and Sports Car Club. Those two clubs getting together for the first time to do a joint venture. In the last couple of years, sidecar racing hasn't been given a British championship, so we felt that it is a definite need for them to get back in. The excitement of sidecar racing definitely appeals to the spectators, being something totally different from the normal solo racing.
The races at this level are typically twice the distance of an average club race. So not only do you have to be fitter in mind and body, but in the wallet as well. The relentless replacement of parts to keep the outfit performing well can be too much for some teams. There is some prize money and some TV coverage, but certainly not enough to keep a team going or to tempt big sponsors.
Everything's done family sponsored. We all have to chip in. It's mum helps, does her bit, sister does her bit as well, brother he obviously passengers, and every penny we get goes into the bike. I have no sponsors, I'm looking for sponsors, so it's just every penny we get goes into my sidecar. And like we have friends, Neil Franklin, they come and help, he helps Spanner, and it's generally like 100% hands-on family thing. There's no one from the outside helps us at all.
The fact that sidecar racing happens at all at this level is almost solely down to the efforts of the Formula Sidecar Racing Association, the voluntary body that looks after the sport. So what does FISRA do?
FISRA does a lot of things that the riders are not aware of. They were formed about 15 years ago to represent the sidecar competitor to the governing body. Since then it's grown in strength, organising race meetings and involvement within the World Cup Series. The committee is made up of voluntary people who are all involved with racing still. I'm father of Tom Hanks, is chairman, and my husband used to race. Marie Norbury, she's assistant secretary, she's a sister to Steve Norbury. We've seen sidecar racing change dramatically over this last 15 years. particularly in the presentation of the machines, which the FSR have encouraged the rider to do. We've made them more aware of the publicity side of sidecar racing. They need to promote themselves more, and we do see it sort of paying off these days. There's still a long way to go.
To get to the top of the British Championship is tough, but if you take a step up to the world stage, it gets even tougher. These are the fastest sidecars in the world. In all forms of motorsport, the rules have to keep up with the times, and sidecars are no exception. Sidecars lost their Grand Prix status 2 years ago and became the Sidecar World Cup. With no sidecars to sell to the public, manufacturers had little interest in the class. Sporadic TV coverage didn't entice sponsors on board, and with highly tuned two-stroke engines to buy and maintain, the sport had become elitist. However, in the 1999 season, the Sidecar World Cup has been run alongside immensely successful World Superbike Championship, which has brought the spectacle of sidecar racing to huge crowds and global TV audiences.
The moment now is you've got different classes where you've got the Formula 2 class, which was brought in to be like the learning class for people to learn the art of sidecar racing. And that progressed on a little bit and went to become a British Championship status. Formula 1, which is the big class, which is like what we're in, which has been the 502 strokes over the last few years in the Grand Prix. And now it's got a chance to be in with the Superbike races using four-stroke engines, which are basically standard. You can do very little to them, so you can't tune them, you can't spend a vast amount of money on making them very competitive but reliable. So what we're trying to do with the FIM, Olympia management and most of the top teams involved have got hold of the class and trying to keep the reins on it from a financial and also technical point of view, to stop it going too far away, so that let's say the teams from 10th down in the championship, they have the same chance as what we've got, get the same machinery. They don't have to go selling their houses or whatever to do it.
The two-stroke sidecar engine, the ADM, is a very expensive engine to buy, but it is cheap to run. The four-stroke is the other way round. It's a cheap motor, you can buy a good second-hand engine, but then they're very expensive to tune, and if you do blow a four-stroke engine up, you total the whole thing, whereas with a two-stroke you just nip a cylinder, and so it's a replacement piston and cylinder at the worst. But I believe now, with the extra help we're going to get from sponsors, the four-stroke has to be the way to go, because television is covering it now. We're at World Superbike, and this automatically brings in the sponsors.
It's going to be a big change, because having raced two-strokes now for probably 20 years, it's a bit of a wrench to actually throw the two-stroke away and have to start on a four-stroke, which is a lot of difference. But saying that, they seem to be very popular this year. They come into the sport with circuit sidecars, and I think they've improved the sport as a whole. We have full grids now, and also this year, of course, there's a lot of competition between people with four strokes and two strokes, all out trying to outperform each other, which is only healthy for the sport. So I think in the long run, I think the four strokes will be a good thing.
The changes may take a couple of years to become obvious, but some teams are already starting to notice the difference.
A new prospect for next year for our team, for Stuart Muldoon and Paul Woodhead, is that America has moved into sponsorship in sidecars. We've got sponsorship from two major companies, one of them a motorcycle company and the other one an electronics company. They've had a look at it, they like what they see, and they want to use it primarily for the hospitality side to entertain their customers. So if this comes off, then it's the first time America's in, and I think if they come in, it'll go sky high.
Getting from British Championship racing to World Championship isn't cheap. But hopefully, it's not going to be the vast gulf it was just a couple of years ago. As with the British Championship, the first thing you have to do is qualify. And at this level, that is an achievement. There is only one race per meeting, but at twice the distance of a national race, it's much more demanding on the outfit and the crew. If you're not physically fit, at this pace, fatigue will soon set in. Brian Gray's passenger, Steve Pointer.
The machine that we race in the Formula 1 World Cup sidecars will do a 0 to 100 mile an hour and stop again in less than 7 seconds. And I think the G-forces on you is about 3 Gs round cornering, and so you have to make sure you're holding on at the right time. And at the same time, you don't hold on too tight all of the time, because you just get too tired. Your arms can't cope with that. Well, mine can't anyway. And so you have to remember when you're going down the straights to breathe properly and relax when you can. Else you could find yourself later on in a long race that you're getting too tired.
At whatever level, the prospects for the future look encouraging. New rules and regulations, along with advancements in engine and chassis design, promise close and exciting racing, which will not only be appreciated by the teams, but also by the increasing number of spectators. And who would deny they get their money's worth? While most spectators may have some knowledge of a motorcycle, few casual observers would understand the full intricacies of a racing sidecar. Here is a vehicle that is designed to be intrinsically unstable. To better understand how a racing sidecar works, you have to take a look under the fairing. By far the most common type of sidecar on the British scene is the tubular steel trellis design, commonly known as a conventional. It has been the mainstay of sidecar racing for over 30 years and is still competitive. Steel tubes are brazed together in a manner that Isambard Kingdom Brunel would have approved of. While Formula 2 regulations require the chassis to be made this way, there is no such restriction on Formula 1 or open class. But the design is so good in its long or short form that it is still being manufactured. They are not made in factories, they are made by individuals, each one with their own ideas on how things should be done. The factory is usually a garage or a workshop at the back of a house. Tony Baker, has been racing sidecars for over 30 years and has been successful at World Championship level. He has been building chassis for other races for over 18 years. With European and world sidecars dominated by the monocoque type of construction, it seems strange that this type of chassis is still so popular.
Much easier to ride, they're much less demanding on the rider, particularly an inexperienced rider. It's very much the same as riding a short bike in the way it feels. There are differences, but that's a fairly easily learned technique. They require very little alteration from circuit to circuit. They're quite easy to get on with. They're not so bothered about track surface conditions, i.e. rough tracks, ribbed, tram lining, this type of thing, don't affect them so much. Regards to repairs, accident damage and wear and tear, that type of thing, the tube bikes are fairly easy to repair. Easier than a monocoque in some ways and harder than in others. I've got quite an old example here, beside me. This bike's over 10 years old. It's been involved in a fairly major crash, and it'll cost a bit of money, but not a huge amount. And the guy's got a bike back again. If it was a monocoque bike, it would cost 3 or 4 times as much to repair.
Tony's workshop in a small village in Cumbria seems like 1,000 miles away from the high-tech world of Britain's Formula One belt. But even traditional crafts, such as making a tubular steel sidecar chassis, are subject to change. Brazing tubes together has long been the accepted way to make a chassis. Brazing acts more like a glue than a weld. There is comparatively little heat involved, and the parent metal stands a better chance of retaining its flexing properties without cracking. But it also adds to the weight. With the advancement of TIG welding techniques, Tony, like a lot of his contemporaries, has moved over to this method of manufacture.
TIG welding produces a stiffer chassis, and the finished article's all the same colour, whereas with the brazing you get 2 colours. There's much less heat input with TIG welding, so you have a lot less straightening to do, so the time's not taken there. You've got to be very careful not to use too much current, or you get what's called undercut. So you've got the thick weld, a thin undercut, then the tube, and obviously all the stress goes into the thin bit. The cost of a tubular Formula One new is 10, perhaps 11 at the most, depends on the spec, £1,000. That would get you a chassis with the bodywork, the floor, the brakes, 6 wheels, the radiator, everything there to put the engine in. The customer would finish off the fiberglass to fit him and put his own engine unit in, do the plumbing, put his fuel in and wire it, and that would be about it. For a Formula 2 in the same situation, you're looking in approximately £1,000 less, but you can take a Formula 2 down maybe £2,500 less if you really go down on the spec of some of the stuff. But that can be done, if a team doesn't have the money. They need the bike.
Easy to drive and simple to maintain and relatively low cost are the reasons behind this particular design's success. But racing is about winning, and at the highest levels of the sport and winning world championships is the monocoque. Steve Webster and David James have lifted the last 3 world titles in a row on their LCR chassis, built by Louis Christian Racing in Switzerland. LCRs are the favourite chassis of Steve's old rival Rolf Billand. In terms of winning world championships, Louis has been the most successful chassis builder in recent years, but he has not had it all his own way. Terry Windle built his first monocoque for Jock Taylor as far back as the early 80s. Before that, his tubular chassis had taken George O'Dell and Jock to a world title each. In 95 and 96, Darren Dixon and Andy Hetherington took world titles on a Windle monocoque, proving that his designs are world beaters. Although the basic concept is proven, Terry, like all designers, has his own ideas on how to build a monocoque.
These chassis now are constructed from HS30 aluminium sheet. It's 18 gauge, folded and anodised after it's all constructed and completed as a chassis. The main bits are all done off jigs, so that if you need to replace them, there is no problem. You just unzip the bent piece, then you can put the new piece on, and it will be exactly the same as far as handling is concerned and everything. It really is like a simpler way of making a chassis. Tubular ones possibly are easier for the home builder to make, because with the monocoques you've got to have like folders, guillotines and all the proper equipment to do it with, because you certainly can't rivet one of these up with an hand riveter. It needs a proper air riveter to do it as well. With this type of chassis now, we've started to put diagonal bulkheads in, because we find that they make the actual construction a lot stiffer. I've always said that if the construction of the chassis is stiff, we can get more out of the suspension, because you're working with an unknown factor with a twisting chassis. So if you've got like a stiff chassis, you've got your suspension that you can adjust, and you get full benefit of that adjustment instead of losing half of it through the twisting of the chassis. The cost of these monocoques are a little bit dearer than what the tubular ones are, but for £18,500 you get a complete rolling chassis with 2 lots of wheels, all your fairings and everything. Add to that you've got engine, exhaust systems and a little bit of electronics. Really, I would say like for £25,000 like you've got a Grand Prix chassis now.
One crew that has every reason to be grateful to their Windle chassis this year was Steve Abbott and Jamie Biggs. They won both British rounds of the World Series. Had they not been plagued with engine trouble most of the season, they could have had a serious chance of the title. Tubular and monocoque outfits differ, not only in their construction, but also in their driving characteristics. Tubulars are known for their forgiveness, and monocoques are known for being temperamental and needing a smooth and precise driving style. While the stiffness or flexibility of the two chassis can partly explain this, the main difference is in the way the two outfits are steered. Monocoques have hub centre steering, similar to a car. This means that when the handlebars are turned, the surface of the tyre stays more or less in contact with the road. Tubulars, with conventional steering, are more akin to a motorcycle, with the steering head set at an angle, but unlike a motorcycle, they have a tyre that is flat across its profile and can be 7 or 8 inches wide. This means that the further the handlebars are turned, the less the contact with the track, and hence the less grip the tyre has. It therefore follows that in order to negotiate a corner at speed, the less the handlebars are turned the better, as the tyre only has maximum grip when the wheel is in line with the chassis. In order to get the outfit to turn, the driver induces the rear wheel to drift by opening or closing the throttle, causing the rear wheel to slide into the turn and maintaining the front tyre's contact with the track. A technique car drivers call rear end oversteer. This makes them quite forgiving, as the outfit can be corrected or steered either on the throttle or by the passenger moving his weight. With hub centre steering, the front wheel grips and the outfit will go exactly where you point it. But if you're not precise with your throttle hand, the outfit can just as easy pivot round the front wheel, giving you a good view back up the track. Both driver and passenger have to be smooth and accurate to get the best out of this type of outfit. The steering is so sensitive that if the passenger sneezed, the driver would feel the handlebars twitch. There does come a point for any team that is on the up when acquiring one of these chassis is a must. But to change over from one to another can often mean a change in driving style. Not easy to do when the style you had was bringing good results. Tony Williams and Steve Crow were regular top 3 finishers in British national events on their Baker tubular. They bought an LCR and have effectively taken a year out to learn to drive it.
I made the change from the Baker tubular to LCR monocoque chassis at the end of last season. We had one outing on it last season, and this is our first full season with it. The difference is absolutely unbelievable. The Baker is so forgiving. I mean, an excellent all-round bike, good for the road circuits, everything. And the monocoque you have to be just a little bit more careful with. Tend to have to be a little bit more smoother, where you can get away with quite a few things on the Baker. Also a very good bike is the LCR. It just takes a little bit of getting to grips with. I think we've just gone round here in the fastest time we've ever been round, so I think we're finally getting there.
The differences between the two chassis can be graphically illustrated by hitching a ride on both types. First is a racing lap at Mallory Park in last year's British Championship with Ian Guy and Gary Partridge aboard an LCR monocoque. Listen to how precise this is done. And now, if we do a lap in the same race with Jock Skeen and Neil Miller on their tubular Baker, Jock will demonstrate the fine art of steering on the throttle. Although these long chassis are dominant at world and international level, in Britain there are more Formula 2 outfits than any other type of sidecar. The UK has an abundance of short circuits, such as Mallory Park, Brands Hatch Indy Circuit, Cadwell and Alton, where the Formula 2 chassis is at its best. Their ability to brake later and carry more corner speed makes this a very competitive class.
driving the Formula 2 outfit is basically on the edge. Down the straights you're pretty limited to the engine speed itself, so you're sitting there waiting for the corner to come. When the corner comes, you have to tackle it as quick as you can. When you've chosen a line, you're stuck on it, and bar the passenger moving and re-steering the bike, you're committed to that line. Whereas on an open class bike, you can use the power of the engine to change your line.
Well, driving a Formula 2 is like driving a camel. It bucks and weaves everywhere. You have to fight the handlebars. Compared to a Formula 1 bike, when I had the LCR with 500 Crowser in it, it was a lot faster in a straight line, but not as, I didn't find as quick around the corners. With a Formula 2, you have to ride it hard on the corners to get anywhere. A Formula 1 bike, to me, is a bit like a missile. You launch out the corners, but you have to hard on the brakes and not as hard around the corners. I feel that any newcomer to the sport has to learn his trade on a Formula 2 to learn how to ride on the corners.
Driving them is one thing, but passengering them is quite another. The word passenger implies that they're just along for the ride. But the Australian term monkey and the American term acrobat are probably more appropriate. Like most sports, there is more to it than meets the eye.
I think most people can associate with race bike, with people that race bikes because they probably ride a bike on the road. People can associate with racing drivers because they probably drive a car on the road. But nobody can associate with what a sidecar passenger does because it's such a wacky thing to do. And I think because they haven't got a nice, neat little pigeonhole to put us into, they squeeze us into somewhere that just says lunatic. And so I guess it is a pretty lunatic job to do, but it's, I think it's also a very special form of motorsport because there's two very active people on one bike.
Passenger in a Formula 2 I've found to be unbelievable. There's nothing like the feeling of exhilaration that you get. With Bruce, it's very difficult getting from to his level. I've got two drivers, one's really steady, and the difference between the two is tremendous. With Bruce, you tend to find that it's very physical and you do have to be fit and you have to really work at what you're doing. You get to feel the engine and eventually you just click and you know what your driver's going to do so you can be there for them. Occasionally you find that you're not there, but as a good team you compensate for one another.
There's three main positions for using on right-handers. You can put your feet on the block here at the back, but that will tend to lift the front up and unload the front wheel, making it difficult to steer. You can put your foot down in the bottom corner of the tray, down here, but this tends to dig the chair wheel in a tad. But you can also, if you put your foot up onto the top, onto this block, that will actually keep all the weight central to the axle, and that will actually keep it all absolutely right, and it's ideal for doing fast right-handers.
When I first set eyes on a sidecar, I was beginning to, I just thought, you know, how the hell does this thing actually get round a corner, let alone get round a track at 140 miles an hour? One wheel looked as though it wasn't actually going to turn or dig, and I couldn't actually comprehend the geometry of the whole thing. But as soon as you sit on the bike and you are going down the straight at those sort of speeds, you go into a left-hander, you know you've got to make the back wheel grip, so you know that's what you have to do there. A good driver will always do all of his braking before a left-hander, but a good passenger will be able to actually move those 2 or 3 inches, which makes all of the difference to float the chair wheel over the left-hander and back onto acceleration. The more the front and the rear wheel grips, then the more acceleration your driver's got. There's no point in going, you know, round a left-hander with the bike wheel right up in the air or right on the floor. Right on the floor you're scrubbing off speed, and right in the air we're beginning to lose some sort of stability.
Watch figure skaters. they make it look so easy, and you get the ice yourself, and you're running backwards for 10 minutes trying to stay up on 2 skates. And if you watch Mick Dillon slide in a solo bike, he makes this thing look so easy, it's so difficult. And it's the same with sidecar passenger. If you watch a good sidecar passenger, the whole thing looks so fluid and easy. And we all know that, anyway, anyone that's passenger a bike knows that how hard work it is. So when it all comes together, it's nice. And you stop thinking too hard and concentrating on what you have to do, so it becomes a natural movement everywhere there. And you're in a fast lap, there's a pole position lap or a race winning lap, and then it feels good.
Maybe it's strange to think, but I don't think much about the passengers, not in a disrespectful way, because I know the passengers have had, like Neil, my brother, I can't fault them, you know, they're just there when you need them and that's it. If you feel the bike moving, you know your passenger's doing something wrong and you might have a problem, stop. But other than that, I just look forward and go for it. When have you stopped?
Sitting on top of the car, holding onto the roof rack and just going around country lanes.
It's probably like being on the rails of a toboggan run.
I'd say it's just like sledging going downhill, but with corners.
It's a bit like being in a wheelie bin being towed behind a car at 100 miles an hour or something. And when you come back, you can't remember any of it.
If driver-passenger cooperation is the key to a successful team, then being twins must be an advantage. Jock and Mick Skeen arrived on the world stage this year, riding their faithful tubular Baker. A disappointing breakdown at Donaldson was followed by a spectacular ride at Brands Hatch, which netted them 6th place in front of record crowds on an outfit that wouldn't be considered competitive in the World Cup and on a shoestring budget. A remarkable achievement, considering that they were novices not that long ago.
Started sidecar racing in 1995 after going to watch Mick solo racing for 2 years. I was watching him and thinking, oh, I'm fed up being here, not doing anything, because the competition between us has always been strong. So we bought a sidecar between us at the end of 94 for the 95 season. And this is our 5th season, 99, and we've got on very well. We're out there to win, we're not out there to be second best, because we think we're spending all this money on the machinery, etc, etc. So we're there to do our best, and as I say, the competition between us is always strong. Our first season on the sidecar together, we finished 6th in the Scottish Championship. We had Best Newcomers award as well. The second season, 96, we had 6th in the Scottish again, but we won the Scottish Sidecar Racing Club that year, We also had, what do I also have it here? 97, in 97 we did British Championship meetings as well as the Scottish, and a new championship called the Northern. We won the Scottish Championship, we won the Northern Championship, and we came third in the British. So all in all, that was a good season for us. We then progressed on to the British in 98, which is where Jock took Neil on the back. I was quite hard going when I had the solo and the sidecar. I used to do possibly 2 practices with the 600, then 2 with the sidecar, and I might have 6, maybe 7 races through the day, so it was quite heavy going for myself, jump between the sidecar and the solo, but I enjoyed it.
Trying to do so much at once is difficult enough when everything goes according to plan. But in motorsport, things often don't. Overcoming small technical difficulties like this are only one of the obstacles to overcome if you're going to reach the top of your sport.
Brands Hatch was really good. It was a good experience. We had 2 qualifying sessions, and after the second qualifying session we qualified 7th, which was 2/10 behind Stuart Muldoon on Superpole. If we'd just been a fraction faster than Superpole, we would have got it. I mean, I don't know where we could have improved. Yeah, we were pushing all the way. There was maybe a couple of sections coming into the hairpin or down Paddock Hill Bend that were on the limit. If we'd tried any harder, we would have been off. Yeah, Surtees was a very difficult corner, and that was where the braking zone of the LCRs or windows were making up so much ground. But once we got round there, around the back, the full circuit, we were every bit as fast as everybody else. The start of the race, we usually have quite good starts, and we got a reasonable start. We're up to 3rd by the hairpin, and then into 2nd by the bottom of the hairpin, Grimhill Bend. Along towards Surtees, we knew a few of the World Cup guys were coming behind us, and they sneaked through and inside with the better handling chassis. But we had a good start, and we thought, right, we'll just give it our best shot, but we'll have to conserve tyres because it's such a long race, and the heavier chassis, that the tyre was going to be a major aspect of the finishing the race, because all we wanted was really a good result. We had a good race. It was very hard. Yeah, right. We did maybe 6-7 laps, and then the rear tyre on Steinhausen, who was in front of us, started to chuck rubber at our faces. So that was a bit of a worry if he had the same or similar weight machine to us, and we thought if his tyres going off, ours was going to be the same. So that was a concern in my mind. Yeah, we followed him for quite a few laps, and I knew where we were faster, and I thought, right, we better pass him, because if his tyre goes completely, he could spin, we could be on the side of him, anything could happen. So we took him at the top of Paddock Hill Bend, no problem, and then my right leg went numb, I couldn't change gear. I think we did 3 laps in 1 gear, the 4th gear. Yeah, at that stage I thought the gearbox had packed up, and we did do 3 laps in 3rd or 4th gear. Till the end of the race I realised it was his leg, and I could have thumped him, but that's how it goes after getting into 5th place and then losing it again because of a problem like that. As he said, Steinhausen passed us again, but I got my feel on my leg back. We caught him again, but it was too late. There's not enough laps left to be able to pass him again. But we'll just settle for where we are, and we did. I was absolutely exhausted. Round the back end of the circuit, I could feel my shoulders tightening up every lap just with the physical effort to steer the bike up through Dingledale. And I never looked for that checkered flag so much in my life. It was good to see that one, to know that we'd finished the race. It was a good race for me. We did Donington earlier on in the season, and it was much harder physically for me than what Brands was. It was 23 laps and very hot temperatures, but I could have done more laps than what we did. I was quite surprised. It was very hot. It was 33 degrees, I think, when we went out. I mean, and the worry, the machine running so hot, to be running very hot through qualifying, but it held together for the race, but just.
Sheer determination has brought them this far, and with some proper backing, who knows how far they could go. Talent and dedication can only take you so far in sidecar racing. Money, or lack of, is always an overriding issue, even at the highest level.
All the expense of running a sidecar, we hope that from next year we will get better support from the organisers, because out of a crowd of 125,000 at Brands Hatch for our World Championship race, all the top solo drivers are being paid big money to drive there. The sidecars got no start money at all, and I believe first prize was under £1,000. If just 50p was taken from each ticket sold at the gate, and I believe it was about £25 to get in, that would give each sidecar team about £3,000 start money, and this is the sort of figure the sidecar team needs to take to run a World Championship outfit.
There's never been very much money in sidecar racing. Since we started, it seems to have gone downhill. We spent a lot more money in the previous year than the recent years to get up to the more higher class events, the World Cup events. Brands Hatch, for example, cost us a lot of money, and we got not a penny back for finishing 6th. Not we're negative towards the sport, we thoroughly enjoy it, but if someone came back towards the racers, the racers are spending all the money for the vehicles to get there, for the outfits, entry money, everything, tyres, and if you don't have big sponsors, you're spending all your own money, and it's just money out all the time and nothing back, never anything back to the racers themselves.
When I started Formula 2 sidecar racing 10 years ago, it was a lot more affordable than it is now, basically. What we're racing with now is more than I can afford, whereas when I started I could just about afford it. So we are really scratching to be able to get out there and do what we're doing. Without sponsorship and help financially in small ways from friends and family and sponsors, we just couldn't possibly do it anymore.
I enjoy spending my money and spending Joe's money on what we do, and we do very seriously. We don't go out during the week and we don't go out drinking, but it means the times when you do go out to the pictures are more special, and that's a treat. But my whole life, the whole household finances actually involved around the sidecar racing. I haven't had my front room decorated for 6 years, and it's still there with no wallpaper on. But at the end of the day, you know, what comes first for your particular time of life? We're memory building at the moment, and that's what I intend to look back on when I'm older.
Apart from lack of money, one thing that all sidecars have in common is breaking down. Sooner or later, it happens to everybody. Sidecars place incredible stresses on the engines and components. And while an engine blow-up for a World Cup team is an inconvenience, for a club team it could mean an early end to the season. Jules Williams and Dave O'Connor have left the airfield racing and are having a go at something a little more competitive. This is Lyddon Circuit's annual sidecar burn-up. They've done well and have qualified for the big race of the day, but come race time, they're not on the grid.
Because of neglected routine maintenance. And what's happened is when the engine gets warm, the valves and that heat up, and then there's no clearance between the cams and the valves. And if we go out there again, we're going to hit a valve against the piston, and that'll be it, end of engine. So we've got to pack it up and go home.
The other thing that sidecars have in common is crashing. Everyone does it, and whether it's down to mechanical failure, trying too hard, error of judgment, or just plain being in the wrong place at the wrong time, most crews just say, it happens. The trouble with sidecars is their instability. While falling off a solo motorcycle is often a linear affair, when you've lost control of a sidecar, anything can happen.
pick yourself up. We had a bad accident last year at Darley Moor. It wasn't even down to preparation, it was just one of those things, you know, the rocker cable stuck open and we had a crash. You never think that time stands still and you see your life go before your eyes, but that's one of those times when time really did stand still, and I saw my whole life go through the air. But after it happens, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself down, and you carry on. It's so important. It's important not to give up. It's important to not to let both yourself down, but you know, your driver down, and the supporters and your sponsors. You know, not to let anybody down.
This never give up attitude is best summed up by the crews that take on the toughest challenge in road racing, the Isle of Man TT races. 37 3/4 miles of public roads encompassing towns, villages and a mountain. The crews face weather conditions which can vary from sunny to rain or even fog on the same lap, on a surface that varies from smooth to very bumpy, and all on a vehicle that has no suspension in one wheel and not much on the other two. The stresses on the Sidecar chassis are enormous.
Some of the stresses are much higher. The shock loads from the bumps and the jumps and the general pounding are much higher. Also, the vibration factors come into it because you tend to be sat at the same revs for long periods. So if it's a bad vibration, it'll break things because of that. There's less torsional stresses because you're not creating the same G's going around corners, because it's more like a fast drive to work rather than a full circuit race.
Places like the Isle of Man on far sections, if you were on the Ireson chassis that I've passengered at the Isle of Man, you can actually lie down in it to get yourself out of the wind. And when you peer up on certain places and have a look to see what it's like, it's a bit like looking at one of the video games at an arcade, and everything's whizzing past so quick, and it's a bit daunting sometimes, so you just put your head down and close your eyes again till the next set of corners where you know where you are and you know when you've got to get either way the driver's braking and changing gears.
I'd been going over to the TT for numerous years before I even got involved with sidecar racing, let alone thought I'd ever been able to compete myself. I saw Julia Bingham many years ago, and I thought one day I'd like to do that. I was fortunate enough to meet Joe, and we were able to do it. And if there's anything I remember the most, it was after my first lap, and Joe looked round and he saw me grinning, and he said to me, if there's anything I remember, Kate, out of all of this, it's that smile on your face after the first lap.
Whether it's on public roads or circuits, sidecar racers have one thing in common. They love what they do. Friendships formed in sidecars tend to last, and somewhere down the line, it stops being just fun and becomes more a way of life.
I go on holiday once a year, but then my wife takes me on holiday, but she has a full night. The rest of the year is mine. We do sidecar racing. We're in the garage every night. The engines are in the kitchen. They're in the living room. They're in the bedroom. It's just sidecar racing. It's just eat, sleep, work on the bikes.
I love passengering. I love being in a team because everybody pulls together. I started, again, sort of classic exit sidecars for umpteen years. Then I did grass track and came back to sort of road racing sort of 7-8 years ago. Been with various people, and then I got linked up with Trevor. And the sheer setup that Trevor has got with the whole race outfit and everything is actually second to none. And everybody pulls together, and it's a big happy family, and it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I wouldn't do anything else.
I just love the sport. I've always been involved in motorcycle racing right from early days. Schoolboy scrambling, senior motocross, went into solo riding. on short circuits, and it was just seemed a natural progression. But the camaraderie between the crews is just second to none. You've only got to come down to the paddock after race day, and we party. We ride hard and we party hard, and everybody is absolutely brilliant.
I've been involved in sidecar racing for over 30 years, and the main thing about it is the closeness of all the competitors and their families. We're one big happy family, and when they need times of support, they're always there for each other. If there are problems with engines or machinery, they'll all help each other to get them out on the rider out on the track. When the race starts, it's a different ball game. The horns come out and away they go. But at the end of the day, they're a great bunch of guys. In fact, they're a great bunch of people.
People involved in it, friendly, give you advice, not a problem. And you'll progress on within that championship, within the club racing, into a British Championship, to the British Championship, if you're pretty good at that, into the European Championship. If you're half decent at that, you'll get into the Grand Prix. If you're half decent at that, you'll be sat as a world champion in years to come.
After that, it's been, I had Dad, but I got him this. Oi, rinse him out!
Give him a kiss!
Not quite that bad yet, Dan. Is that the end?
Is that okay with us?
I think it's going to ruin that, isn't it?
Go away with the coconuts.
Advantages.
Well, hang on.
Sorry.
Okay, we're running.
There are advantages and disadvantages to sidecar racing on airfields. The advantages are...
Right.
There are advantages and disadvantages to sidecar racing on public air. Suddenly becomes a three-lane motorway when you try filming anything.
I don't need to do that.